I was born in Salt Lake City, Utah, 1958 at Holy Cross Hospital. My dad was born in a little coal mining town called Standardville, which is also in Utah, about maybe 150 miles south of Salt Lake. It's gone now. It's a ghost town. His or my mom was actually born in Provo, Utah, which is about 40 miles south of where I was born. Grandparents, both my mother's parents were also born in Provo, um, and my dad, his parents, his mother was born in Provo, and his dad was also born in the same town my dad was in, Standardville, coal mining town. My guests were mostly Scottish, Irish. There's some English, and I think we've had a German in our lineage, just one German great grandparent somewhere. My culture growing up, I was raised Mormon. I think religion is maybe one of the things they count as ethnicity, but anyway, that was the Mormon church had a large influence in our upbringing growing up. Not really. It's kind of funny because I haven't been to church in 40 years, but everywhere I go, every time I go to a new city and work, they always want to know if I tell them I was from Utah, they always want to ask how many wives I've had or how many wives I have. And I've had two, but not at the same time. So it's kind of a funny question to me since I know I hear a lot about polygamy and never met one. So anyway. I'm a systems analyst at DTE Energy. I help implement new computer systems like the billing system and outage management, things like that. Been doing it for about almost 20 years. Both my parents were federal government employees. My dad managed the local Social Security office growing up, and my mother worked at she was a secretary her whole life, but she worked for first the state of Utah, and then she moved to Seattle later in her life and worked for the IRS and the Immigration Service as a executive secretary. My mother's father was an electrical contractor. He owned his own electrical contracting company, did a lot of commercial type work until his eyes got bad in his mid 40s. He had a couple of heart attacks, and then he turned the business over to his son. Um, my mother's mother was a housewife, and she had four kids to raise. On my dad's side of the family, my grandpa was a coal miner his entire life. Started in the mines when he was 12 years old, and worked right up till he was in his 60s when they shut the mines down. And my grandmother on my dad's side was a housewife. She raised seven kids, so they were all very busy. My dad fought in the Korean War, but he was kind of at the tail end of it, so most of the real heavy fighting was already done. When he was young, his two older brothers were in World War II, and I think they were both in the Army. And then we had, I believe it's my great grandfather, possibly three greats, was in the Civil War and was actually killed in the Battle of Harper's Ferry, fighting for the Union side. I just got lucky by being in between wars. I was about 15 or 16 years old when the Vietnam War ended, and there was a long period of no wars, because Vietnam was fairly ugly. Right after Vietnam, they stopped the draft. Up to that point, you had to register at 18 years old, what they call selective service, which is you registered to be drafted. And then they would call you up depending on a number drawn out of a fishbowl. Luckily, I was not involved in that. So a lot of my friends were in Vietnam, and some of them didn't come back well. Well, I have a lot of friends and neighbors that have a lot of similar interests, and we have some great parties and porchside conversations with our friends, our neighbors. A lot to do in town, and it's a great place to live. Well, I was born in Salt Lake City, Utah, and grew up there most of my life. And then once I became an adult, I started working for electric utility companies, and I ended up living in Wyoming, in Oregon, and then took a long-term contract job here in Michigan. Met your mother and decided to stay here. This is where we made our home. My ancestors came from Scotland, Ireland, England, Wales, and I'm told there was one great-great-grandparent from Germany, but mostly British Isles and Ireland. I don't remember the exact dates, but I've seen some genealogy papers. It sounds like most of my dad's side came to the U.S. from Scotland, Wales, and England to be coal miners. They were coal miners back in the old countries, and there were a lot of opportunities here for miners, and they came over. First, they settled in the eastern U.S., like West Virginia area, and then moved further west to Utah in the mid to late 1800s.